Despite what you may believe, Forrest Gump actually used an incredible amount of VFX for a movie of that time, from the very beginning with this feather sequence, which we'll explain later, and continuing right throughout the movie. But aside from the obvious uses of VFX like getting Tom Hanks to appear in a variety of historical footage, like this shot with Lyndon Johnson, this shot with John Lennon, or this one with Richard Nixon, visual effects were cleverly used for these 4 different and very necessary reasons. 1. For augmentation. Sometimes a set or location where a shot is filmed isn't exactly how the director first envisaged. A road is shorter than needed, a stadium is smaller, a public area is less populated, or in some cases the budget just won't allow for anything better. So in this case, the VFX teams will adjust, extend and augment the environment to the director's specifications. In this scene, Forrest had to speak to a massive crowd in the Lincoln Memorial. Unfortunately, to create a crowd this big, you'd need around 250,000 people. So the team shot Tom going up to say his speech on a motion control camera in front of a large crowd at the front of the stage. After completing that shot, they then moved the crowd to different quarters all around the reflecting pool and filmed it with the motion control camera, following it with the exact same moves it had previously. These shots were then composited with the original plate of Tom. A similar thing was done for the scene where Forrest plays football for the University of Alabama. This was actually shot on a football field in the University of East LA. But here, instead of repositioning and filming the same crowd, they used digital matte paintings to extend both the stadium and the crowd. This was also done for the ping pong game in China, which was actually shot at Paramount Studios. And yes, that ping pong ball is actually CGI. 2. VFX were used for impact. It's not uncommon for a shot to lack the visual punch or emotion the director is looking for. A battle scene may seem empty, a fight scene too slow, or an explosion too feeble. So the VFX team will then use a number of different techniques to give the shot the impact that is required. In Forrest Gump, the director Robert Zemeckis wanted the first Vietnam sequence to be loud and busy with a lot of helicopters flying past in the background. But this just wasn't economically or logistically possible, and they could only manage to get 2 to fly through. So to solve this problem, at the same time as they were shooting the scene with the 2 helicopters flying past in the background, they had other camera operators hidden behind props and set pieces, taking telephoto shots of them as they went by. All of these images were then composited into the shots and animated to look like they're flying through. 3. VFX were used for safety. Although most shots in movies are relatively safe to shoot, some of the dangerous shots that we see in them can still be quite dangerous to film. As actors aren't always trained to do some of the stunts required in a movie, stunt people or stunt doubles are used for anything deemed too dangerous for the actor, unless your name is Tom Cruise or Jackie Chan, of course. But sometimes stunts are too complicated or too dangerous even for a trained professional, and here is where the VFX teams will step in. For the shot when Forrest is being chased by some guys in a truck, the director wanted the truck to be right close up to Tom. But if Tom had tripped up, the truck would have driven over him. So to avoid this danger, they filmed a plate of Tom running on his own with the camera locked off. They then filmed another plate of the truck on its own and panned it when it turned. Then they did rotomats of Tom and composited both plates. And this guy here is a stuntman. They did the same for this shot when Forrest enters the football field. Number 4. VFX were used to solve problems. "We'll just fix it in post" is a phrase that filmmakers love and VFX vendors hate. But sometimes there is just no other way around it. This is when VFX teams have to get their thinking caps on, and oddly enough, it's also when they're at their most creative. The ambush sequence in this movie brought its own set of challenges, like how do you blow up 2 soldiers without actually hurting anyone? The solution they came up with was to shoot one plate with the cameras locked off and the actors attached to wires and getting pulled out of the shot. Then they shot 2 crude dummies laid on top of an explosive and wired so they too could be pulled out of the shot, and in doing so would come slightly apart. They also shot some different pyro elements and explosions at different frame rates. Then, using high-speed compositing software from Discrete Logic called Inferno, they combined the fireball with the dummies and then cut from the live-action plate to that composite right here. Another problem that appeared in this sequence was when Tom Hanks had to carry a 90kg Michael T. Williamson out of the jungle whilst napalm exploded behind them. Once again with the camera locked off, they filmed a stuntman carrying another stuntman from a distance and then stumbling. Then, just when he stumbles right here, they morphed into a shot of Tom carrying Williamson, who was obviously too heavy for Tom to carry, and so was attached to a wire hanging from a crane to pick up his weight. For the napalm component of the shot, the special effects team set up a tremendous amount of pyro elements and gasoline to mimic napalm, all running up towards the cameras, which were set at various different speeds. They then composited the actors in front of the pyro footage, morphing from the stuntmen to the actors right on the stumbling point. Something you may not have noticed in this shot is that these jets, and the napalm containers they drop, were CGI. And these birds flying from the cornfield were also 100% CGI. Another problem they had to solve was the feather sequence. How do you control a feather that's being blown about randomly in the wind? You could use a man in a green suit to puppeteer the feather, but Mr. Green here can't fly, and so the feather sequence was done by first filming the entire shot without the feather, filming a feather on a wire in front of a blue screen, and then superimposing and animating its position on top of the footage. However, aside from it needing to make reflections on this car, or on this wet floor here, the feather still needed to transition from superimposed to real, and this is where VFX came in handy. On the original plate, they lent a real feather against Tom's shoe, which was then digitally painted out. Then, by using a CG feather, they were able to make the transition from blue screen feather to CG feather, and then finally animate it to fall and be crossfaded into the real feather.